Hello, yoga and karate friends. I wanted to follow up on my last video on practice, and I was sort of catching out those people that haven't been practicing, uh, and I thought I would tell you some stories. And by the way, I'm not meaning in any way to make anybody feel bad. And if you haven't been practicing and for whatever reason, and you've just had a hard time getting to to establish a daily practice, it's not something to feel guilty about or feel that somehow you're not making the mark or something. Um, when it's time for you, you'll do it, or you'll make a decision and decide that it's time for you to do it. But there may be some education to get you there. So that's what I'm hoping to provide. I'd like to tell you a couple of stories. One is about a friend of mine who's a trumpet player. Most of you know that I'm a brass player, I'm a trombone player. And this person was a very good player, but a very conscientious teacher. And we would go out for coffee together, and she would talk in detail to me about all the different ways that the muscles should work in the face and stuff, way beyond my understanding of how things work. And there was a recurring theme that kept coming back in our conversations. Students had a certain kind of a sound, and she struggled even to describe it. That there was a sound around the edges, but it lacked core or something like that. And she tried all kinds of things to try to help these students who had this odd impediment in their playing. And then one day, she got mono, and she was sick for she couldn't play the trumpet for a month or more. I think it was like 6 weeks. And then so she finally got well enough that she could pick up her instrument again. And the first few notes she played, she went, "Oh my goodness, there it is. There's that sound. They don't practice." And I've felt some of the same thing when since we've closed the doors and I've discovered certain people don't practice. I'm like, aha. That's why this person has a certain awkwardness, or it takes so long for certain things to come across. Like, that's one of the things you're gonna discover when you start to practice regularly, that you're gonna get really good really fast. It's gonna really make a difference, because this stuff is meant to be done in the context of a daily practice. Here's another story. Another musician friend of mine, pianist, really fabulous pianist, was telling me that someone had called him recently to set up piano lessons. And for some reason, he doesn't really know why, but it just occurred to him to ask, "Do you have a piano?" And this prospective student said, "No, I don't have a piano." And he said, "Well, how are you going to practice if you're taking lessons?" And she said, "Well, I'll come to you once a week and I'll be practicing with you so that I'll learn how to play." And so we laughed about that, because of course the context of a music lesson is that you take a lesson once a week and then you practice every day in between, so you're ready for the next lesson. And we laughed about that. But then we talked a little more seriously and we said, well, why should she know that? Why should she know anything about music or playing the piano or music lessons or anything else? That's our job. If we're going to teach, we have to teach her what that is. And so I think that's an important point. And it goes further than that, because when we think of practice and practicing here in the West and with our cultural history, we imagine we're going to practice something in order to be able to do it. And that's not what practice is, sort of capital P practice that we're cultivating with traditional martial arts and yoga work. And when you look at someone who's got a long-term cultivated practice, it's not unusual that they would be pretty good at it. And you go, wow, so-and-so is really good at yoga, or so-and-so is really terrific at martial arts. And you go, boy, I'd like to be like that. And say, well, I guess you need to practice. But if you talk to that individual, typically they'll say, yeah, great, thanks. It's not really about that. That's not what I'm doing. I'm not trying to get good at it. It's a practice. Okay, so there's a clue in there as to how this operates. Again, outside of the context of actually doing the practice, it's hard to tell you really what we're talking about. But along those lines, another story, a shorter story, I guess. One of our senior karate people came to us, to Jennifer and I, and had a serious question that he wanted to ask. And so, okay, we're listening. And it turns out that he'd been struggling with the yoga part of the at-home curriculum that we, pretty much insist on for serious martial artists. And for him, he'd been with us long enough that it was relatively new, that we hadn't done that from the beginning. So it's a little bit of a bait and switch, like, why do I have to do this now? We didn't know that. The question he asked was, what is it about yoga that you guys like so much? And Jennifer and I spontaneously just burst out laughing. Like, what are you talking about? Again, we're not doing it to get good at it. We're not doing it because we like it. Those are the reasons we practice things in the West, to achieve something, or because we're just drawn to it in some way. That's not what practice is in the context of traditional Asian practices. I'll leave you with one more story that's about this, but maybe in a less direct way. The ancient samurai were attracted to the Zen, the accomplished Zen teachers, who were who they were because of practice. Not because of their practice, not because of Zen practice, but because practice, period, whatever it might be. And by the way, just, tangentially, parenthetically, in traditional Asian cultures, you can get, your third degree black belt in flower arrangement or calligraphy, or whatever it might be. These things are all practices in an absolutely equal fashion. It's not different. It's not essentially different. The content of the practice is actually not the important part. Anyhow, the samurai were interested in these Zen masters. They felt they had something to offer them. And the story goes that a particular samurai went to a Zen master and asked a question. He asked, "What's heaven and hell?" And the Zen master looked at the samurai and said, "I have no interest in discussing this with a dull, uneducated brute such as yourself. And in addition, you smell bad." The samurai was just enraged and drew his sword to, separate the Zen master's head from his shoulders. And at that moment, the master said, "That's hell." And the samurai was just shocked into stillness and realized the truth of what he was been told, that when he was engulfed with rage, he was living in an actual hell. And then he said to the Zen master, "Thank you for this valuable teaching. Like, you've really moved me forward." And the Zen master said, "That's heaven." Enjoy your practice.